look at all the capitals, all the major cities in the world. Say, we'll take my country, England, for example. You've got London, Birmingham, Manchester, to name but a few. The world is governed by the devil. The devil roams this earth. Now, all his minions, of where he is in control the most, is all your major cities, all your major capitals, where all the evil that's being done, all your shootings, your stabbings, your rapes, and all those kind of things that are untoward are being run by the devil.
Prove to me that you are alive.
And the flat that I was in the living room, and there was my bedroom side, and I was into my bedroom on all fours, and I was at the side of my bed. And as I was at the side of my bed, my body got flipped, and then my arms stretched out wide like that, and then I'd confessed to everything I'd ever done, everything I'd ever said, and I felt elated. I felt so light. I felt like I was on cloud nine. It was the most beautiful experience I've ever felt. The power that was in that room when I was saying the Lord's Prayer was frightening but comforting. For me, God's power is immeasurable. It's unbelievable. But at that moment in time was something that gave me something back in life. It was just kind of previous to that, I took. But now God took all that back and molded me into a better person, to make me a better person, to allow me to be the person I was chosen to be, and to start my path of where I've ended up today. So it was just a massive experience to have.
So would you say that this was the most profound experience in your life after the electrocution?
Yeah, absolutely. I think some people go through life and don't have any experiences, where then you have other people that have different experiences. And a lot of people, if you stood or sat them down and said, look, this is what happened to me, they'll just look at you gone out, because they haven't perhaps not experienced anything, so they won't believe what you've experienced or what you've been through. So you will get a different measure of different people. But for me, it's like having different stages of different experiences at different times in my life, so to speak. So for me, that sticks out more than anything out of everything that I've ever done.
Right. Yeah. And I want to say again, thank you for sharing that, because in that moment when you recounted that particular time, I seen in your eyes that you were getting choked up because of how beautiful this feeling was.
Yeah.
So at that moment, right, did you feel like Christ came into your life?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. This, for me, this is what he can do. If you have that deep faith of knowing what he is and what he can do. After that, there was about a month where I was still looking for work, and there was something came up in Chesterfield, so I'd phoned up and I'd inquired about this job, and they said, "Oh yeah, come down." Like, so here's me, wet behind the ears, Christian, kind of thinking, the world's my oyster. The feeling is unbelievable, and when God uses you, and He uses you in such a good way that you kind of get for me, it was an experience on top of another experience. And I went down for this job interview. I was talking to these two ladies, got shown around, and one of them had to leave, and got back to the office to talk to this other lady, and she was explaining the job, this, that, and everything else. And then after she'd done that, we just sat there talking because we had to wait for this other lady to come back. And she was explaining that she'd lost her son in a motorcycle accident, and she was a Christian herself with her husband. And she says, we've not prayed together for like 20 years. And while I was listening, and even to this day, I will never know where this came from. At that moment in time, after she'd finished, I looked at her and I said, "This is what God wants you to do." I says, "When you go home tonight," I says, "you with your husband will kneel and you will pray." I says, "And God will come to you and he will heal your wounds." Now, for me, that's just a born again Christian for a few months, telling somebody who was a born again Christian for 30 odd years, I still don't know where that came from. I've never questioned it because it came through me, it came from me, or I was used as a messenger.
Yeah, it came from
For
the
this
source.
lady. So for me, it was just kind of, that's how God works. That's what He can do if you have that ability and love for Him.
Right. Before we continue, and this is such an amazing story, man. Can you basically, if you can somehow in words, verbally describe to all of us, since you experienced the dark and then you experienced the light, which is Christ and Almighty, what are the differences between these feelings, if you could at all describe?
Oof, wow. If I had to categorize both, you see, with the dark side, it's a short-term fix.
Mm.
You cannot get from life, or I should say, you can get anything in life, but there's a price to pay. There is always a price to pay when you fiddle about with the dark stuff. Doesn't matter who you are, or how experienced you are, or how adept you think you are. There's always a price. You may not pay it straight away, but you will pay eventually, because they will take something from you that you've always wanted. They might give it you with one hand, but they will take it with the other. That is to keep you interested, if you will. Whereas Jesus Christ and sort of like the light side it's just so different. It's not easier because you believe in Jesus Christ and you have God. You get taught. The light side teaches you. It also it teaches you in a way that you understand. Whether you have that depth of understanding or you just understand ordinarily, because the Christian side of life shows you how to live, and it gives you that guidance. It gives you where if you make a mistake, you can pick it up again and start again. Where the dark side is, it judges you. If you don't do something for them, then they will take something from you. Whereas the light side is so different. It's harder. Don't get me wrong; it's a lot harder. The God teaches you to kind of accept people when they do wrong to you. You know, it's a different mindset. You see, you kind of, the white side is kind of gives you the knowledge of right from wrong, from morality to all those kind of things, the way you should live your life, you know, peace, and accept other people for who they are and for their opinions, whether rightly or wrongly. Whereas the dark side is you will and we want. And, you know, they literally suck the life out of you. The dark side, that's just something what they do. For me, it's a no-brainer.
You know, when you actually went back to that experience, you know, what I seen unconditional love in your eyes when you were recounting this story. So this is where I'm like super interested at this point, but I'm a little confused. So how do you go from newly born Christian to quote unquote white magic? How does that happen?
Right. So as you become a born again Christian, you kind of, what accompanies that is the spiritual nature of being a born again Christian. It's just something churches won't accept. It's something church won't discuss. They know that the devil exists and all that, but they will not explain to people what can occur. The spiritual life is part of the Christian life. If they but knew it, Jesus Christ was spiritual. So for me, my journey took me from being a born again Christian into a different church. And before I get into the church and white magic, I have to bring you back when I was born again Christian, first become a born again Christian. I visited a church in Leicester, and I was took there by somebody who knew family members who went to that church. So, you know, I was invited up to that church, and I just went, somewhere to go. So I went. And as you entered this church, the atmosphere was electric. It was a feeling that I've never, ever seen in a church. This is the only church that I've ever been in that had this immense power within inside it. And as you walked into this church, all the people that was already there were all speaking in tongues. And I'm just kind of thinking, you've brought me to a nut hatch here. So we sit down, and, you know, people are really lovely, really genuine, lovely people. And as the service went on, towards the end of the service, the pastor said, you know, who wants to be anointed by the Holy Spirit? So I'm sat there and I'm just minding my own business. And the person I'd come with got their hand underneath my elbow and pushed my hand up. Pastor collared me along with two others, got to the front, and he said, right, he says, what I want you to do, he says, is say the Lord's Prayer out loud. He said, that's all I want you to do. He says, and then you might feel a cold breeze. And I thought to myself, okay, or whatever. So I said the Lord's Prayer. And for me, that's all I did, was say the Lord's Prayer. finished the Lord's Prayer. There was a little bit of a breeze, but I didn't think very much of it, to be fair. So the service ended. On the way out, and the pastor grabbed me by my shoulder and pulled me to one side. And he says, I've been pastoring in this church for over 25 years. He says, and no one has been given the gift of speaking in tongues quicker than you. And I looked at him and I went, really? And he went, yeah. And I thought, okay. So I really didn't think anything of it. And that didn't materialise till much later. But little did I know at that moment in time, it was something I needed for later in time. So going back to my local church, got involved in the church, did plays and stuff like that. But then there was a part of me that was going, don't belong here. I had a feeling and a sense that the more I was going, the more I didn't want to be there. And I couldn't understand why, and I couldn't question as to why I didn't want to be there. It was nothing bad. It was just kind of, this is not for you kind of thing. So from there, I left the church because I started to work somewhere else. And I must admit, I left the church behind for quite a while. I'd kind of termed the phrase slipped off the wagon, if you will, regarding, not going to church or reading Bibles or anything like that. I'd stopped doing that. For me, it wasn't for me. It was just no. It was just a big no. But I had a sense and a feeling that there was something else, but I wasn't sure what or how that was going to materialise, but it did eventually. I was in my late 20s, nearing my 30s, when things started to change and I started to take more note. Again, I was looking at spell books. I'd got involved with somebody and told them I was born again Christian. It just went straight over their head. They weren't bothered. They weren't interested in that kind of thing. For me, it was a slow burner. I knew that I was different. I knew that there had to be something else. I had to understand what that was or where that was going to take me. And as I say, I got involved with somebody else, and for them, being a born again Christian, straight over their head, they weren't bothered. They weren't interested in that kind of thing. And it was difficult to get them to understand. And eventually they took a little bit on board, but they weren't overly convinced. So for me, it was just a natural progression. And we bought this house, and I remember she used to go to college at night, and I just knew she'd be doing something, but I couldn't put my finger on it. And she came home one night, and I turned round and I said to her, well, there's somebody in your class, isn't there? And she went, yeah, there's quite a few. I said, no. I said, this person, I said, sits to your right-hand side. I said, he's got blondish hair down to his shoulders. I said, he has this certain bag. I said, and he sits to your right. I said, about 2 desks behind you. And she went, yeah, probably. I said, not probably. I know he does. I said, you've got to watch him. So again, it was just kind of doesn't interest me. So okay, fine, fair enough. we ended up separating. But I knew what she was doing. I just couldn't prove it. Not at that moment in time, but it would come to me. And that's when things started to pick up pace. It's kind of everything that I've had previously to do has led me to this point. And I think I started my first reading, which I'll always remember because I was sat watching TV one night when this lady came to me, and all I was getting all week was these yellow flowers with mum written on them. And this was being drilled in for the whole week. It got to a stage where I said, right, enough, give over. I know, I get it, I understand it. And I'd read this young girl, and I says, can you picture yellow flowers? I says, I'm being given yellow flowers. I says, in the word mum. She says, yeah. She buried her mum a fortnight previous, and in the hearse itself at the side of the coffin were in yellow flowers the word to mum. So it was kind of getting that kind of confirmation is unreal.
That's really crazy, and I really want to like pinpoint that experience because I think like you know, this is another key. Like this story is incredible. You know, I'm the kind of person where I really, you know, listen and intake everything that you are saying.
Sure.
And to me, this is like a brilliant plot of some, you know, crazy movie. Okay, this is super crazy to me, right? Because again, you go from, let's say, the dark arts to being a newborn Christian, having this profound experience where, you know, the spirit of God is in your room, it's with you, undoubtedly with you. Then you go to this new church in Leicester, and you have another experience. So, and then you realize the church that you were going to is not really the place for you. But this is what's crazy, and you kind of skipped over it. So the vision that you had, like, so are you realizing that you are actually having some sort of a vision, information coming through? And was there a battle in you internally saying, well, look, this is not so Christ-like? Like, if you could, you know, remember that experience where you had this vision of these flowers, like, did you know that this is a vision, or are you thinking like, am I going crazy? Like what was that like?
Um, it was very much like they were kind of, for me, they were gearing me up for receiving things. Some of the best experiences I've had has been while I've been watching TV, funny enough, and it's just kind of this information just comes in. And I think what it is and how you receive it is when your mind is not full of everyday life and problems and things like that, then you get to clear your mind and you're focused elsewhere. So it allows that information to come in. And it was kind of, I think, one of my first times that I've had running with my guides and stuff. For them to keep going, yellow flowers, yellow flowers, yellow flowers every day is just drive me nuts. And I just basically turned around and said, look, I've got it, end of. And then it stopped. So trying to understand where that come from, and I was just kind of trying to marry it along. Did I see yellow flowers, or did I see a funeral with yellow flowers with mum in? Did I see an article in a paper or a magazine? Did I see that? And you question it, and it's just like, did I just receive that? Do I understand that? Where did that come from? Was it my thoughts? Was it something or that's been given to me, or did I just pluck it out of the air? So you have all these different questions going through, and then you sit there and you separate each and every one of those thoughts and think, well, no, I didn't see it, right, so I can lose that. But then I sensed it, and I felt it. So those two marry themselves together. So that's how I must have got that information. Right. If I've got that information, where did that come from? So for me, it's a process of elimination. It's right. I know I'm not crazy. I know I'm sound of mind, and I've got a fairly strong mind. So, yeah, so that was given. But who gave it me? Did the light give it me, or did the dark give it me? So I need to separate that. So you then, when you're given stuff and it's from the light side, it's clean, it's clear, it's very much like water. But from the dark side, it has different angles on it. It's a lot sharper. It's very unclean, and it doesn't feel right. So for me to get that information, they are like preparing me for the journey that they're going to be putting me on, or the journey that I was chosen before I was born, that allows me to do these things.
But internally, was it a contradicting feeling when you got that first, vision of flowers, or a sense of flowers? Like, is it contradictory to you that you are, well, look, I am Christian, I'm following this path? Or are you like, okay, well, this is another door that opened up and I must explore?
There was a bit of conflict, as you say. For me, it was right. I'm a Christian, and I shouldn't be doing this because biblically it says you shouldn't do it. But then you open a different kind of context and different kind of questions and answers. The Bible says you shouldn't do it, but when I cast my mind back, I died when I was 14, and I was given this gift for surviving death. So, am I allowed to use it? Do I feel guilty for using it?
Right.
Kind of. It says in the Bible that it goes against Christian values and principles, but hang on a minute. I'm still spiritual, but I still believe in Jesus Christ. He's my Lord and Savior. So if I'm given a gift from God to do the spiritual things that I'm allowed to do, then it's a blessing. And I shouldn't feel guilty for going against what's written in the Bible. And for me, it's a case of understanding and not having that conflict, because I think a lot of Christians will kind of have internal battles where that's concerned. If they feel kind of spiritual, but they know biblically it's wrong. It's not wrong. It's not wrong. And people, where the Bible's concerned, it's guidance. It's not saying that you should do this and this, that, and everything else. It's just guidance to live by. There's no Christian walking this earth is perfect. Nobody's perfect. But for me to have that internal conflict of being spiritual and Christian at the same time, they marry themselves together because you learn to work with both. And I fold my experiences in Christian wise and my life wise in when I'm reading. So they go hand in hand. It's something I overcame eventually.
Yeah, there's a lot of misconception, and I think a lot of the misconception is kind of instilled in people's head from the organized religion side, meaning, the people that, maybe archbishops, maybe cardinals, maybe whatever, like, they want to have sort of more control. So they tell people, well, look, you can't do this because you're that, or you can't do that because you're this. While the feeling that I'm getting, that you are allowing, even though you're having the battle which you're supposed to have, but you're remembering your life and thinking, well, I've been guided. So you're realizing, like, well, let me follow and see if this is my path. So this is what I want to know, because you keep mentioning your guides. I see that your perhaps your spiritual animal is a wolf. Mine is also So when was it that you were introduced to your guides? And also throughout this time, are you having astral projections? Are you having out of body experiences? Like, so how were you introduced to your guides? And did you have any, experiences like astral projection and out of body experience?
Um, being introduced to my guides, I'm kind of very much into my natives, and I've always been taught by my natives. Um, when I was introduced to my guides, the very first guide I had, I always remember, and I love that guide to pieces. They gave me an experience of when guides are there and when they change. This particular guide was my very first guide. I think he was my helper from one step to another in my early spiritual life. I got up one morning and I was given the vision of this guide had left because he couldn't take me any further. So they were giving me a new guide. This particular guide had kind of left his teepee. His door was shut. There was a fire and there was a white wolf walking round. I had such a love for that guide, and to a certain degree, I still get kind of upset because I had such a loving relationship with him. But it was time for him to move on because he'd done what he set out to do, and it was my time to have a new guide. So I did astral projection. I can't, to be fair, I can't really say that I have. I know that I have in the past, but to what extent, I couldn't tell you. I've had one or two experiences where I've caught somebody doing black magic towards me and my wife. So it's just kind of catching somebody like that, having an out of body experience. But um, when I go to bed, I go to sleep and I sleep pretty well. So if I do come out of my body, I probably do, because there's been times where I've had a message off of somebody where they said, "Oh, I was talking to you last night." I'm sure I was. So it was just, you get to know these things through other people. But I don't feel it and I don't experience it, to be fair. I don't want to elaborate on something or say something that, that's not right or true.
Right. And again, I think your story is so unique, and I'm pretty sure maybe, there are other people that maybe experience something close to it. So
Prove to me that you are alive.
if you can explain to everyone that's gonna watch this, and and me, what are the spiritual guides and how do you know if they are present in your life?
Spiritual guides come in all shapes and sizes. Depending on where you are in your life and spiritual life, depends on which kind of guide you get. If you are evolving, then the more you evolve, the higher the guide you get. Some people kind of have the same guide for so many years. Other people chop and change guides, like I've chop and change guides, because as you grow as a person and as you grow spiritually, you get the guides that align to how you are. They are there to teach you. Guides are there all the time. It's just kind of, we tend to shut them out, if you will. They are there to help us along in life. They're there to influence. They can't interfere. They just influence. And some people see their guides, other people feel their guides. It's, everybody's different and everybody will have that different experience. I've had a lot of different guides. As I say, the vast majority have been natives. They've taught me so much over the years. It's unreal. I'm literally taught by guides. I'm not taught by books, not by churches, not by groups or anything. I am specifically taught by guides from day one up to present day. So everybody has different guides. Some have just female guides, others have male guides, others have all sorts of different guides, tribal guides. They have family as guides. It all depends on the person. It depends where you are in life and in spiritual life as also. But we tend to shut a lot of spirit stuff out because, one, people don't understand it. Two, mainly because it scares the crap out of people, to be fair. And you've only got those people that deal in it, that understand it, that it should be treated with respect, because so much can happen. And, life can flip on a sixpence.
I wanted to ask you, and I know that it's going to be hard to describe with words, but if you could, because there's constant arguments with Christ. Is it God? Is it the Son of God? Is it the triune God? Like, so from everything that you have gathered and learned and felt in your life, who is Jesus Christ?
You see, the Bible has him as part of the Holy Trinity. You see, for me, I don't question it. I know Jesus is Jesus Christ. He should be, well, he is or should be your Lord and Savior. Not that I struggle, I kind of question. I know God exists. I know the Holy Spirit exists. And I know Jesus Christ exists because they're part of what you call the Holy Trinity. For me, Jesus is separate from God. I know the Bible says Jesus is God, and he says, I and the Father are one. Whether people have picked that up and twisted it and turned it to how they see fit. But for me, Jesus Christ is a different entity to what God is, but Jesus has the same power as God. That's how I see it. That's how I envision it. Because I don't think that it would be very difficult for people to understand that God put himself on earth for himself to be crucified and so on and so forth. But for me, Jesus is a different entity to the Holy Spirit and God, but Jesus Christ has the power of God. That's the way I see it.
So, and thank you for that. So how would you describe God? What is God? Who is God? So basically what I'm asking is, a lot of people, going back to Christianity, think that it's a man, white long beard, he's sitting on a throne. The sun is the right of him. Some people are, in this kind of newfound thinking, say that God is energy, and there's different interpretations and kind of different stories. So if you were to describe who is God and what is God?
I will give you an experience that I had that answered my question. And my question was always, as I've traveled through the spiritual path, where does God reside? That was one of my questions that I always wanted to know. And this particular evening, I was sat watching TV, and my guide kind of said, "Come on." And I thought, where are we going? So while I'm watching TV, I sort of astral traveled, if you will. And he took me to the realms of spirit. Now, as I was walking in spirit, and he put me in this very, very long hallway, pure white pillars that were so tall you couldn't see the top of them. And as we were both walking down, he suddenly stopped, and I turned to him and he says, "Carry on." So I carried on, walking down, looking at all this pure white marble. And then there was this huge gap, which I kind of looked into and went in. I have never seen a table this big. It was pure, it was beautiful, like marble all the way around. It was like a huge oval table. And as I went into this room, to the right hand side of me were four men, from what I could see, all wearing different coloured togas, and the biggest book I have ever seen. The book was huge, and they were holding it in one hand, and that just blew me away. And they were just turning the pages like that, and I looked at them and I questioned it, and I thought to myself, what is that? And they said it was the book of life, and they were just turning pages, and I'm just kind of thinking, whoa. So immediately turned away from them and looked straight in front of me. Now, the other side of this table, there was this other chap that was dressed in a kind of like a purple toga with a gold sash around the middle. And behind him was the biggest French doors I've ever seen. And kind of comically, I looked at this bloke, and I'm looking at where I'm stood to where this table is. To get to him, I'm thinking I'm going to have to walk around, and then I'm thinking, well, no, because I'm not solid, so I'll walk through this table. And before I could even say one word to this guy, these doors behind him just opened. And at that moment in time, my question was answered. Where does God reside? And at the back of this chap, when these doors opened, was this mountain range. And this mountain range just went on forever and ever and ever. It was, you couldn't see the end of it. It was huge. Now, for me, God is spirit. He's our creator. I don't think he's human. I think he is spirit. I know people say he's energy and stuff like that, but he has some sort of consciousness. Otherwise, he wouldn't be who he is. And for me, I think what also gets my goat, and I've heard quite a few people, I've seen reels and different things on where people says, "Oh, I've seen God." No, you haven't. Nobody's seen God. And to show me where he resides tells me an awful lot, because then he's not a substance, he's spirit. Because in the Bible, God is everywhere. So for me, he's spirit. He's yeah, okay. If people want to say energy, then yes, energy, but he is spirit.
So okay, again, you're having this incredible experience. So basically the way you describe it is that there is a realm outside of ours that you had a glimpse of where God resides, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
So you have this, I think it's your first like real medium experience with the flowers and everything. So after this point, do you realize that, look, I am a medium, and now do you ask yourself, what is the mission of this medium? And did you start exploring it more? And did you get a crazy sort of vision that was life changing for you or for someone else? How did this How did this first coming into this understanding that you're a medium? What was that like?
Um, it just came out of the blue. It was just something to be fair, I wasn't expecting. Since the marriage breakup and everything, and went our separate ways, and I'd moved, and then was still working at the same company and stuff like that, because the company was quite vast, and I'd had an understanding by just talking to different people and standing and listening to people, and not kind of jumping in and giving my version or my opinion and stuff, and just listening to how they were and what they were experiencing, and kind of trying to understand somebody else with how they were. And this particular week, we'd been inundated with agency workers. So we just kind of got talking to different people. This one particular day, again, this came out of the blue. I don't know where it came from, and I didn't understand it at the time. But there were just two of us left. There was me and this young girl, and we tidied up. And as we were tidying up, she kept turning around and looking at me, and this, that, and everything else. And I just let it ride for a bit, and I was starting to get kind of slightly agitated. And this young girl, she was quite striking looking. She was a very good looking girl.
Mm-hmm.
So I was sort of like, I'm doing my own thing, I'm tidying up and everything else. And there's about 15, 20 minutes left. We just sat there, and she's sat opposite me, not too far, but in talking distance. And I looked at her. I said, I know what you're thinking. She says, no, you don't. I says, yeah, I do. She says, no, you don't. I went, really? She says, yeah. So I turned around and I says to her, I said, I know exactly what you're thinking. You're thinking that I'm eyeing you up and down. You think that I want to ask you out. You think I want you to get you into bed, etc., so on and so forth. All this, and her face, her jaw at the floor. She says, how the hell did you know that? I said, it's what I do. So she eventually, as we went, she went home and told her mum. And then a message come back the following day that her mum wanted a reading. And I said, whoa. She says, don't do that kind of thing. Don't do that. But, you know, in for a penny, in for a pound. And that's what started the ball rolling into a lot of different things. So it was at that moment, knowing that I had that ability to kind of tune into people's energy or their energy auras or whatever at that moment in time, was just like, whoa, this sounds really, really good. So it started me on a path of no return. It's an experience I've always looked back on as one of the first ones where everything just seemed to come out, and where my guides had put me at that particular time. So it was a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so throughout you being a medium, and I'm guessing it's been now for quite a long time, are you yourself connecting with spirits, meaning people that have passed on, and have people asked you to get to communicate with some of their family members that passed on? Does this happen in your journey?
I quickly found out that what I was doing when I was starting reading people was the fact that I wasn't getting people coming through. It's even up to today, it's rare I get people coming through, but they do every so often. For me, my spiritual path hasn't been down with getting people through. It's been guiding people. It's kind of, how can I explain it? It's like a piece of paper scrumpled up. That's how they come to me. But after they leave, it's a straight piece of paper. It's kind of taking somebody's life that they come to you, and you're there to take it to pieces, put it back together, give it back to them, and off they go.
So what it sounds like is that you are tapping into some kind of, subconscious, intuitive side of a person that maybe consciously they don't even know what state of, affairs they are in, but you can kind of sense that. And so you're basically a guide in a way also, and I know that for mediums, visions come in, like you described. Sometimes it's these pictures, sometimes it's noises, sometimes it sounds, like sometimes it's actually, words that you hear. How does it come in for you?
For me, it's like I've always explained to people, depending on who the medium is, and we all work differently. But as I've always explained to clients when they've been sat in front of me, it's always like being half in, half out, because you have to make that connection. It's kind of like a triangle, if you will. You've got the two guides that have the information from the client's point of view. Then you have to step in to make that connection at the top with the guides, or the two guides meeting. And then you have the client and then yourself that have to make that connection. So it's a bit of like of a triangle. You've got your client, then me tapping into this, but also having to tap into my guide and their guide. So everything collates together as one. Sometimes I get senses, sometimes I get visions and everything else of what I'm being shown during the reading. 9 times out of 10, most clients that I've read have had their past is very much like a war zone, because they've kind of been battling so many different things that it's just like a battlefield when they come to me. And I'm there to pass messages on, to give them senses, give them guidance, feelings of what I've picked up, what I've seen. People come in many guises, come for different reasons. I've had readings where people have wanted to know one thing, and I've explained to them that I could waffle on for an hour and a half, 2 hours, but there's only one thing you want to know. It depends on the person and how you pick things up and what they actually want.
Have you, throughout all this time, have you had prophetic visions, and maybe on a global scale or on a personal scale, meaning you had a vision and then sometime later it comes out, almost to the T or something close to it?
I kind of try not to get into worldly things, because I know that for me that's not my forte. I would rather put my life and soul and help one person live a better life and view life differently. I've kind of picked a couple of things up in the world and stuff like that. It's been there or thereabouts, but it's, if I concentrate on it or spend some time on it and look at it and think, that's going to happen and that's going to happen. It's the world isn't as we see it. The world isn't as it should be. It's just, the world's a mess.
It's very interesting that you just said the world, because this was going to be my next question, and I think your intuition is playing a part in it. So because your journey went from an extreme to an extreme to an extreme. It's very unusual, you know, to go from dark to light, to being a newborn Christian, then being a medium, and kind of combining everything together and throwing some things out and keeping this and this. Like, it's true. I've heard, trust me, I've heard many, many, many stories. This is what I do, man. And your story is very unique. So you just said the world. If you could describe to us from your understanding, where are we? What is this world? A lot of people say it's a prison world. Some people say it's a school. You know, other people are just saying, well, look, the devil is the father, and all of these hierarchies are running this world. And some people say lizard people. Like, there's, you know, there's all these different versions. From everything that you understand and gathered, where are we? What is this world?
For me, we are all here to learn. For me, the world is a school. Now, what people get and what people don't understand is what's happening in the world is a spiritual war. Physically, you cannot see it, but it's there to be had. If you take a long view of the world and you take every country around the world and you look at all the capitals, all the major cities in the world, say, we'll take my country, England, for example. You've got London, Birmingham, Manchester, to name but a few. The world is governed by the devil. The devil roams this earth. Now, all his minions, of where he is in control the most, is all your major cities, all your major capitals, where all the evil that's being done, all your shootings, your stabbings, your rapes, and all those kind of things that are untoward are being run by the devil and his minions. They say that Jesus is going to come back really soon. The signs are there, but I've always said not in our lifetime. The things are not as they should be.
Why are you saying that? Why are you saying that not in our lifetime?
I don't think at this moment in time there's a massive awakening happening. There's like a major shift. You see, every so often, because the darkness runs for so long, it can only run for a certain length of time before things get flipped. And there is like a mass awakening of people of what is actually going on. And you've got individuals around the world that are bringing things to the light. And for Jesus to actually come back, the world has to be in a worse state than what it's in. If you take the world as it is now and times that by 1 million, then you would perhaps be close. But I don't think in our lifetime that he will come back. I could be well wrong. As it says in the Bible, he will come like a thief in the night. You won't see him coming. But at the moment, the life that we lead is a school. We're here to learn. We are here to learn the lessons that we are set to learn. It's a bit like a school curriculum, if you will. You are set certain lessons, and these lessons you will learn. If you don't learn them, then they will be took from one place and put further in front of you, so to make sure you do learn it. Because when we depart this world and we go home, depends on where you go in the spirit world. Bearing in mind, the spirit world is a vast place. You haven't got your murderers in the same place as ordinary people. It just wouldn't mix. It doesn't work like that. But the world for us is where we are here to learn, to help and help each other grow as people. and not kind of turn our backs on people.
Okay, so basically you're saying that if Christ were to return, well, Christ will return, the world will be in a much obviously worse place. So, but you are saying that we are headed towards that bad place, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'll just say, I think that we've still got so much to learn. We've got so much to learn. We think we are so far ahead, technology wise and everything else wise, but everybody's missing the main thing, which is your spiritual side and your how you are as a person, how your heart is.
Right. And you are right, because as far as like a major awakening, because I've witnessed this myself, where I remember, back in like 1999 or 2000, to speak about the things that we are speaking about, it would just it was so rare, it was so scarce, like
Mm,
it was so hard to come by someone that would even remotely understand what you're talking about. And then
mm,
throughout the years, I'm seeing that more and more people are waking up and asking questions, and people are coming into the spiritual journey from every different direction, just like your example.
yeah.
Okay, so you said the spirit world. So to you, and again, from everything that you learned, and I want, like, when I say this, I really want people to understand that it's not that Michael just woke up one day and he's like, he read some stuff and then, or he kind of pieced things together. Like, this is a life for this person. Like, this is what he lives. It has taken him years upon years and years and years and years for this understanding to come. It's just like, when you want to become a lawyer or a doctor, obviously it doesn't happen overnight. So a lot of times when people like will argue, I just want everyone to understand that this is from a very, very, very long experience, endless hours and days, and blood, sweat, and tears. So, okay, the spirit world. So what to you is death? Is it more like the biblical version of hell and heaven, or are there, reincarnation? Is there reincarnation? Like, what is death to you, and what did you mean by the spirit world being vast?
Prove to me that you are alive.